All right. Welcome in, welcome in. We're so grateful that you've joined us today. We will be recording this and sharing out for those who could not make it, or if you just want to review it later because it's so great. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Stephanie Robertson. I'm the outreach librarian and assistant professor here at BYU Hawaii in the JFS library. And we're so honored to get to talk to our guests today. My connection to HLA is I've been a member for quite a few years, ever since I've been a librarian. And in graduate school, I've been the secretary on the board, and now I'm a director on the board, also a part of the Community Engagement Committee. And we are hosting this today. And we encourage you to join us on the committee or at any of our events. We'd love to have you, including Barnes and Noble this weekend for a bit of a fundraiser for us. So check your email for more information on that. Anyway, the purpose of this event is to explore the reading room. You may have heard about it before. We're going to talk about it, its impact, and how libraries can leverage this resource. So I want to briefly introduce our panelists. We have, and they require no introduction. You know who they are, but just briefly here, Anne Inoshita, educator, poet, and creator of the Reading Room. Junie Hayashi and Natalie Kahn are librarians at Leeward Community College and interviewers for the recorded discussion. The pre-recorded interview, which is available on the HLA YouTube channel, will be available. The link will be sent out at the end of this event, and you can watch the full interview later if you have not already. If you have questions at any time, there will be time that I'll ask the presenters here questions and the audience. But if you have any other questions at any time, please put them in the chat. Karina and I will be monitoring the chat and we can get to it at the end, time permitting, of course. So let's begin. We're going to start with the origins of the reading room. We've got a clip here Karina's going to play for us that serves as a nice preview of the mission of the reading room. So we'll start with that. While it's going, if you want to consider this audience question and even put your answer in the chat, we'd like to know if you've encountered similar initiatives that help preserve and promote local literature and share the details. All right, take it away, Karina.
How did you come up with this great idea?
Well, originally what happened was we wanted to have a reading on the Leeward Community College campus. And so we had a guest author coming, and I talked to Les Matsuura, and we wanted to record a reading. And he had this great idea about having an archive of interviews. And then we basically planned a little bit more, and we wanted interviews on the writing process, but also having a way where authors could read their work. And so basically viewers could experience their work, but also know the background of how they got ideas, how they went through the writing process. And then the great part is we have Leanne Risley, who supported our efforts. And basically we have Camden Baruga, and we had Jordan Teruya, and at the video production team here of the Educational Media Center. So we're so grateful to have this program, and we interview around 5 authors a year, and we try to have a playwright, a novelist or short story author, and a poet. So just getting all the genres in there for anyone who's interested in reading and writing.
Awesome. I love that. I've been teaching English here at BYU Hawaii since 2009, and I think I'm so grateful to know more about this. I think this would be an amazing opportunity for my students. But I'd love to know from Anne, can you just briefly share more about what motivated you to start the reading room?
Well, like I said earlier, it's just a great opportunity to share our writing community with the world, because a lot of times it's like I'll talk to my friends who are writers, and we just talk about the creative process, but also I admire their work as well. And it was so a great opportunity to share this community with everyone, because I guess as part of the community, I'm really lucky, and I sometimes when I have doubts or when I have questions, I'll just reach out to a friend. But it's so great to have that knowledge available worldwide. And also, I know we have a rich literature in Hawaii, and it's good to share that literature with the world, because like I know, and I said earlier in the interview that sometimes when we're familiar with only a certain genre or a certain mainstream books, we might not be familiar with literature from a certain place. And when there's no familiarity with that, then some people might make a mistake and assume it's not there. So we just wanted to spread the word that we have a rich community here in Hawaii, and we wanted to share that literature with everyone.
Wow, what a rich resource for not only the authors to get to share their work and have more of a platform, but for everyone else who gets to benefit from it. I'm so grateful for this idea of yours. I'd love to hear from Junie and Natalie from a librarian's perspective. What stood out to you in your conversation with Anne about the role the reading room plays in Hawaii's literary landscape as well?
Well, I'll start. A couple of things stood out for me. First off, and I've told this to Anne so many times, is that I am so grateful that they put a CC license on these videos, which means that anybody can use these videos. They're not behind a paywall, that they're freely accessible to teachers, librarians, just somebody who finds it on the internet. So anybody can learn from these videos. So that was the major thing that stood out for me. And then the second thing that I just thought about is that, we have such diverse voices in Hawaii. And so many times I think people feel, I know when I was growing up, I didn't see myself in a lot of things. I didn't see myself in TV, in books, and so to have this resource and to, like Anne said, see the different genres, the different voices, and say, oh, maybe I can do this too. So those are things that really kind of stuck in my mind.
I agree. I want to almost echo that with what Junie said. If I left with one word, if there's a way to boil down this conversation to a word, it was voices. And it's something that Junie and I know as librarians, we say all the time, you could have the most extensive collection in the world, but if students don't know how to connect to it, your patrons, it's just not useful. Or if it's not something they're interested in personally. And so I love that the voices that are amplified through the reading room are voices that absolutely our patrons connect to, but it is also so aspirational. And so that was something I really took away from the conversation. And I'm excited about continuing this conversation and work, anything from building our displays out, creating events and so on. It was really fun and exciting conversation that we shared.
Yeah, representation is so important. And you folks have created a great platform for that will be inspiring to many, many students and patrons. I really admire that. Oh, and I'd love to look in the chat and see, is anyone, okay, not yet. Has anyone had a similar initiative that helped preserve and promote local literature in your institutions, your libraries, your programs? It's okay if you don't think of anything right away. If you think of something throughout the presentation today and you remember, put it in the chat. It's okay if we moved on to a different segment. We want to hear from you and get inspired by each other, because the more things like this that we can do, the more it encourages literacy and that connection to the library and empowers voice, as Natalie pointed out. So thank you so much. Okay, anything the presenters want to add before we move on? Okay, let's move on. So the next segment here is about libraries and literary communities. This segment is discussing how the reading room connects readers to the creative journeys of Hawaii's authors.
Like they tend to talk about important things as they reflect on their writing journey, and it kind of helps me because it's kind of like therapy, because they have the similar insecurities and, concerns that I guess all writers do, I know I was talking to Loher-san Yamanaka, and she was saying how, I would ask questions about, the writing process, and, we talked about that authenticity question, right? And I know sometimes, basically being authentic and telling the truth in your writing, and that's important. But also she mentioned that, a lot of works are fiction, and just because, I guess I know for me as a Japanese American author, sometimes people think that whatever you're writing is 100% true when you're writing, a fictional piece. So that perspective was good. And yeah, and again too, yeah, everyone's perspective is amazing. Yeah, it's hard to choose.
I really appreciate that. Lately, as librarians working with our colleagues who are working with students on developing their writing skills, and with artificial intelligence tools, chatbots, and so on, things are becoming a little bit generic and they're losing that authentic voice. I think students are maybe like relying on these tools and they're not understanding that their voice is really what's so special about writing.
Yeah, I agree. I think the reason why I think a lot of students use ChatGPT or a lot of AI programs is because they want to do everything correctly. They don't want to make a mistake. But the honest truth is, writing is messy, and you learn by making the mistakes, and then that's how you become the voice that you become. And a lot of times, like we look at these great works, right? They're published, this wonderful poem, right? For example, but it didn't get there just out of the ether, which a lot of people think like, oh, I'm not that gifted in writing because it just doesn't come to me, right? But the truth is, it's all about dedication and work. For example, Chris McKinney was saying that, he has a routine, and then he, works like a certain time of the day and he keeps at it and he keeps on revising. And, greatness comes from the revision, so, and if, so I think in terms of the AI, I think a lot of originality comes from within. So just, trust yourself and trust that you'll make mistakes and that you'll make it better.
Ooh, trust yourself and that you'll make mistakes and you'll make it better. That's so good. Someone cross-stitch that for me. That's great. I love it. I wanted to ask Anne, since libraries are natural spaces for literary engagement, in what ways do you see the reading room complementing the work that libraries do?
Well, the great part is a lot of our guests have books that are in the library. So it's good to promote reading, but also contribute to academic research. Like if someone wanted to research about a particular author or their works, the library is a good source. Also, when we celebrate authentic voices, like there's Poetry Month, right? And now I know like we talk about all of these authors as, masters in their skill, whether it's poetry or short stories or the novel. But I know like a lot of times we can learn from various authors in other aspects. For example, Brenda Kwan, she's a wonderful poet, but in the reading room interview, she talks about the real yoga and basically some tricks to deal with challenges. She also openly talks about mental illness as well. So a lot of times these segments also talk about things that the public deals with in life on a daily basis. Also, there's the creativity, but also there's that documentary aspect of writing. For example, we have Scott Kikawa, and he writes these novels, and it's based in the 1950s, and his main character is a detective, right? And during the 50s, how is it like being a detective working for the police department, trying to solve crimes, right? Finding the answer to a murder mystery. So a lot of times, it's great, a good source for inspiration, but also in regards to the topics that they're discussing. A lot of times writers will discuss various topics in their fictional story or in their poetry that really resonates with the public. And that's a great, I think a lot of times that's why we read, right? To kind of find connection with others. So, not only to celebrate authors, libraries, not only can celebrate them and also encourage the reading of them, but it just works hand in hand where this match between libraries and the reading room is a really good combination because it really helps not only with literacy and reading and writing, it just kind of helps with the topics that we're currently discussing.
That human touch is so important. And you folks touched on AI in the segment there. And I think it's making literacy become increasingly impersonal, even though I think AI is a great tool, definitely has the drawbacks for sure. And I think we see in our libraries and our classrooms that, but when students and patrons can connect to authors and to something familiar in the themes of a story, it brings that human connection, that shared commonality in the human experience to everybody. And I really appreciate that perspective. I wanted to ask Natalie and Junie, how do you envision academic and public libraries making use of this great resource?
Well, that was, again, it was such an inspiring conversation, and I'm still having ideas, after our chat that was actually filmed a couple weeks ago. And something that I keep coming back to, and I think also too, it's this time where we're post-COVID and things are open again. And for a long time, like we were so distant, but in addition to library collections and services, the space is really important. Another part of our conversation, Anne was talking about how these literary communities are so important. And here I'm thinking that writing is like this very independent kind of solitary practice. But her piece of advice for aspiring writers was to form a community. And so I think that's something libraries can do, is just create that space. Anne already mentioned, National Poetry Month would be such a great time to maybe screen some episodes of The Reading Room where she's talking to some of our great local poets. Creating workshops and things like that. So I'm excited about thinking about how to draw people into the library using this resource.
I think another thing that we can do as librarians, I'm thinking more of the academic librarian, that hat, is, we can promote it by using everybody has a LibGuide, promoting it with LibGuides and making customized LibGuides for particular faculty. We can work with different faculty members if they teach creative writing, if they teach poetry, different types of writing. And some of them, like Anne was saying, it's not just the particular genre. It's maybe how they deal with writer's block, or what are they thinking when they're trying to create something. And that would go through all different genres. It doesn't have to be a particular one. So I feel like that is a really big thing. And then I don't presume to know what the public libraries would do, because I've never been a public librarian. But I think maybe having like a local author book club, like they could have, one of those events where even if they don't get the particular author, wouldn't it be great if they got the author to come, like, Anne, can you come to the library, talk about, your books and your poetry, or, your short stories, and then also play clips. I mean, I think that would be so cool for, public libraries to do. I mean,
and
there's
this is a source, like that people can cite it in their work, right? Like they can cite this resource.
I mean, and it's so accessible. I mean, I just kind of go back to that. It's so accessible. Anybody can view it. Anybody can use it in their class, in any of their programming. So, thank you, Anne.
Yes, and Natalie's quick with it. She's such a librarian. She's got the LibGuides up for you all, ready to go. Before we ask also folks in the audience about how programs like this can enhance literary programming at their library and institutions, I wanted to touch on school libraries. I was a school librarian at the beginning of my career, and I think that something like this would be great, especially for older grades, to show the video, maybe zoom in the author too if they can, or if they can't make it to the campus. Students in the library love to have library lessons that have that multimodal perspective, and they love YouTube videos. So I think this would be a great way to bring it on a platform they're very familiar with and that they love, and see it come alive from something they've maybe read in class. You could partner with teachers. Any other ideas for school libraries from any of you folks?
Well, the great part about school librarians and libraries is, I remember when I was young, and a lot of times my love for stories and poetry came from the school library. I know in elementary school that's when it started for me. And if we have authors and readings that students can relate to from their own background. I think that'll encourage the love of reading from an early age when it all starts. I think sometimes when there's a disconnect between reading and writing, because there's no relation to what the reader's experiences compared to what they're reading. So I think the reading room is really great because there's a lot of authors who live in Hawaii that may have a shared experience with a lot of students. Also, I love that idea of like book clubs, writing clubs, and that can be started as at an early age as well, throughout from K to 12 to college years. So I just love starting early and then continuing that
Awesome.
love.
Yeah, Le'E Elementary has a creative writing club. My son attends and he absolutely loves it. This would be great, for them. And when I was a school librarian, the very most like impactful day that we had was when we brought an author from our community. She wrote a three book series about it's like fantasy for children about two brothers, and she showed them the writing process. She pulled her Google Docs up for them to see, read them an excerpt, and I promise you, those books flew off the shelves from students who didn't really care before about checking out anything. So I totally agree. Like I've seen it in action. So this is a very exciting opportunity that you've created here. Amazing. Does anyone else have something to share about if programming and how it might enhance literary programming in your library or anything we've discussed so far before we move on? Check the chat here. Oh, Cindy loves Chris McKinney's books. Me too, girl. Okay. Well, if you think of anything, again, just put it in the chat. We are ready to discuss with you. This next section before our closing is about future possibilities and expanding reach for this amazing project. We're going to see a clip about discussing the future goals of the reading room and its potential growth.
So the reading room, it's well received and it's so diverse and it represents so many voices. How do you see it like evolving or changing as you continue on with your series?
Well, I guess I know we have that global audience, which you appreciate. So I know like maybe expanding our archive, like I know we have like I said earlier, like we have the videos out there, we also have it on television, and I guess just promoting it, like for example, I know we have like Instagram and, Facebook and, but also with the librarians, of like having other venues, like to kind of share this with, so like for example, I know teachers, they'll like ask you like, oh, I want to have more like Hawaii-based literature, here. And so, but I want to have an assignment, but what can I do, And so, having them look at the videos and, basically having them have assignments based on the videos would be great as well. Yeah. So I think just having more exposure is great.
Awesome. Anne, I would love to hear if you have any other new directions or collaborations that you're considering as you move forward with this project.
Oh, sure. And as you know, I usually talk to Les and Camden and Jordan, and we plan on and they have such great ideas on innovative ways for the reading room. Um, we talked about poetry and novels and playwrights, but also we're looking at other genres as well. For example, Future Guest is basically a graphic novelist, and when we look at comics and how comics can actually reflect our population here in Hawaii, where it's superheroes or looking at legends, so that's really interesting, and that also basically solves that or addresses um, that question of when to encourage reading, and especially with comics from a very young age, you can encourage reading. So, and when it reflects the population and their experiences, that's amazing. So we have the basically the expansion to different genres, but also we're looking at different ways that the reading room can be seen. For example, I know we just added like an introduction to the beginning of the reading room regarding the author's information, but we're always trying to kind of switch it up a notch in terms of how we create the program itself. And and we're so grateful that for the Hawaii Library Association for, having this interview today and also helping us to reach others because as you know, a resource is great, but unless people know about it and see it and use it, it's a little limited. So this expanded knowledge of the reading room is amazing. Thanks.
That's so great. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we find a lot in our library. We have so many. In fact, we're going to have a meeting today talking about all the resources we have and why aren't some of them used. And the thing we find the most is that interpersonal connection with faculty or whoever your patrons might be is the best way to get the word out. And so it's great to have events like this and anything else we can do. I did put in the chat for anyone who is thinking about it. Please share with us any ideas you have for increasing the visibility and use of this resource at your library or in your community or your classroom. But in the meantime, I'd love to ask Junie and Natalie, as librarians, what are some ways that the library community, aside from our event today, of course, can support the reading room and its expansion?
I think obviously it's getting the word out. I really think that, Natalie, we should, just on our campus, because yes, it's our campus, but it doesn't hurt because I'm sure that there are some people, maybe not in language arts, I'm sure all of language arts knows about the reading room, but other people who come onto campus or who are in different divisions may not be aware. We could, do a display. I was just thinking, I know we had talked about maybe trying to do a presentation for different conferences. I think timing kind of works against us with some of them, but trying to really get the word out. And then for us as academic librarians working with faculty, I think, even those who might know of the reading room may not realize that this is something that, oh, they could use, in their classes for particular assignments.
Well, yes. Okay. There's a comment here from Aisha. Yes. Aloha. I'm involved with all the librarians in Molokai. Ooh, and we try to make sure we have exposure within our community at Keiki Fest. Read Across Molokai, Read Across America. I love this. A bunch of educators on island wrote a book and introduced it in our high school and community at our local public library. That is so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. That's important. Um, I had an experience here as an English major where we would have an assignment to watch these little videos about the authors before we would read something. And we didn't do that at the beginning of the semester. And that was really, really transformational for me in like actually caring more about what I was reading because I was very invested. And so I think that's so true. And look at all of the different venues on Molokai and nationwide that you folks have been able to kind of put that same sense of familiarity with these authors and literature, and that's very powerful. So thank you so much for your work there. We do have a link of lists of ideas for incorporating the reading room into different libraries. I'm hoping Karina has it at the ready to put in the chat because I did not get it ready, but I see these librarians jumping into action. So if we don't have it, it will be emailed out. But surprise, it might end up in the chat. We hope so. We call our group Molokai Library Services. How do you say that? Ooh, there's more. Hang on. This is good. Oh, Natalie's got her options here. Okay, this is good. So there's lots of options here. And I think we probably should send it out with a information afterwards so everyone, you don't feel like you have to take it down or copy paste real fast. But these are fantastic ideas. Okay. Anything else someone wants to share before we move on to our closing questions? This has been so great and inspirational. I'm actually totally redesigning my English 101 class right now, and you've given me even more ideas. I think I'm going to definitely, in fact, I know I'm definitely going to be putting this into the curriculum. I'm so excited. Um, and in our lip guides as well. Okay, so our closing reflections and call to action for the last little bit here of our time together today. For Anne and Julie and Natalie, what is one key takeaway you hope attendees will leave with today from our fun Zoom interaction?
Well, I have a takeaway. It's important for us to see our stories, to read our literature, because when we see ourselves in literature, we realize that our own stories are important. And I think that's important to have, especially as in a young age, because when we see ourselves, then we realize, when we study stories about ourselves, then we realize that our lives are important and we're like the main focus, And I think that's so important because what happens a lot of time is when there's omission and our stories aren't shared, then we're wondering if maybe our past doesn't exist or our stories don't exist. And that can be harmful too. So I think more awareness that we are important, every one of us, we are important, and our stories do exist, and we should continue writing and reading our stories, regardless of who we are. Everybody's important.
And what was that one saying that you said, if you don't see a story, maybe you should write it? It was something like that. I remember you saying that in our interview.
Yeah, I think it was a quote by Toni Morrison, and it was. And I know I don't have the quote exactly, but it was like if you don't see your own story, it's time for you to write your story. So it's so great to encourage writers to write your story, but also, yeah, that's the thing. Like if you don't see whatever you want out there, then it's about time for it to happen. And maybe you're the one to write it. So yeah, thank you so much for mentioning that.
And I also think what really, throughout this whole process, what really stuck in my mind is collaboration, because we wouldn't be here without all of these people getting together. And it really is true. You might have this great idea and, maybe you work with other people on this great idea, but reaching out to other people, right? And it doesn't have to be in, that work in the same area as you do, same discipline, but how we all can do things together to really, do more outreach. And I think that this is your initiative, the Reading Room Initiative is just so important. And you do such great work that it really deserves to have everybody know about it, not just, I don't want to gatekeep. I don't want to be that person who says, oh, I don't want to tell you this. Then you'll start looking at it and I won't be in the know. I just think, this is such a wonderful resource. And, Natalie and I always say we can have the best resources in the world, but if nobody uses them or nobody knows about them, they're pretty much useless.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll just tack on to say, throughout my time here as a librarian, you do the work to make information accessible to your patrons, and you want your collections and services to really reflect your community. And I don't think there's a better way to do that than by amplifying local voices. And I just want to say that I do think more and more there has to be some activism in the role of librarianship. And whether that is caring for the land, whether that is taking a stand on the kind of voices that you do want to amplify, it's an important role. It's part of librarianship is doing that. And so I really appreciate Anne for bringing these voices together and platforming in the way, making them open educational resources so that we can use them and continue to do that work. And become activists for our local folks.
My takeaway from this is related to what everyone said, but connection, the connection of the author to the reader, the connection that students can feel to the piece and the author and how they can see themselves in stories, the connection we can make between libraries and stories as well. I just really like the idea of showing them a vision of what is possible for all patrons and readers and in classrooms. So that's something I'm taking from this is how can maybe because I'm thinking of my English class and how I want them to think about connections, but I love the human connection going back to the AI discussion of how that's making us a little more isolated, I would say, in some ways. And this brings back that human touch and the human experience and makes things come alive. So I really appreciate that aspect of this project that I want to think about more and think about how I can connect it to my library and my curriculum now.
And I
Amazing.
just have to say, I just have to
Yes,
say,
please.
thank you so much, Hawaii Library Association and everyone watching. Thank you so much for supporting the reading room and for spreading the word and for using this as a resource to have others appreciate and also not have more knowledge in regards to these writers and these stories. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and I mean, all the time it took, first of all, for you to put this amazing project together, but then to do the interview with Junie and Natalie, which we'll send out the link for again as well. If you haven't seen it yet, it's excellent. It's like, I felt like I was watching some PBS special or something. It was just so good. But even better because it's us, And for those who came today to connect with us,